Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. And for news, well, obviously it is FanFest at the moment and we got the keynote for EVE Online at FanFest. And well, on the one hand, I am a little bit disappointed, but I'll be honest, I don't feel as negative about the things that were announced there as what I'm seeing from the subreddit or the comments. So let me try and explain in a nutshell. I was hoping to at least get like an expansion announcement for somewhere this year, even late this year or anything like that. It would have been an answer to the increased price for EVE Online, and it would potentially give us something to look forward to, something to plan for, and then to try and hit the floor running, set ourselves new goals, and really be a little bit hyped up for EVE Online. That didn't happen, but in my opinion, we got some stuff that for me is going to be enough to keep playing the game casually. So I really liked CCP Aurora's part of the presentation. I think the allegiance system at first will definitely be tied to faction warfare, but potentially can also be expanded to like pirate factions and other stuff. I think that is pretty damn cool. I'm not willing to leave my corporation or my alliance to do faction warfare, but if I can just click a button, say I want to ally myself to the Galente, I got the rep for it, they say okay, and then they actually start giving me stuff to do in game, maybe even objectives, go to that system, clear it out, or transport stuff from place A to B, provide us with resources, stuff that doesn't also and that is not going to restrict my ability to fly into Caldari space, then I'm all for it, and I can actually see some cool stuff potentially come from that. So I'm willing to keep an open mind on that, and I think the allegiance system is something that could be very cool. Then we've got the story arcs. Yeah, it's pure speculation, of course, and I do think that CCP will have to come out with a lot more than what we've got so far in the regular events that I think can be slightly tied to certain story arcs. Just, here are some data sites, here are some combat sites, choose a site and go through the reward track. That's not really enough, but I'm kind of hoping that they can expand on that, tell a bit more of a story, and actually provide us with new stuff through the story arc, which, as far as I understand it, is at least the plan for it. So who knows, if we get a cool story arc, where will we be at by the end of the year? It could be nothing, I'll be honest, I'm not going to get my hopes up too high, but it could definitely be a pretty fun experience. And then there's heraldry. I actually like the idea. Ships that we fly are definitely a big part of our identity in EVE Online, and so adding something that's not tradable, it basically becomes a little bit of an achievement system in EVE Online that'll then allow you to pimp out your ships to make sure that, yeah, this is my ship, this is who I am from a visuals perspective in space. I think it's pretty cool, and again, as I've said, it's not like I'm going to go hardcore to get that new currency and to do heraldry, but in a casual way I can see myself look through what's available and try to earn my way to some cool stuff in the way that I enjoy playing EVE Online. So yeah, in a nutshell, I'm okay with what was announced here from a casual perspective. I definitely understand that players that have multiple accounts, that want to play the game hardcore, that were looking for new large objectives, really new content to sink their teeth in, will be disappointed. But yeah, someone that has basically been in prep mode and has been playing the game in a more casual way, doing other stuff as well, I'm actually okay with it. I can see myself keep playing EVE Online in that casual way after this keynote. So there is that. Let's see if there's of course an impact on the market in a moment, but first we'll take a quick look at the New Eden store as well. Let's see if there's anything. Yeah, we do have sales happening here for instance, some Serpentis skins. So that's actually a lot of them. So that's obviously a FanFest sale that's happening at the moment. Elite XIX skins, that's probably, I think it looks kind of cool. Let's take a look at that Hyperion skin here. A little bit of metallic blue, I definitely think that looks pretty cool. So there is some new stuff here as well. And let's take a quick look at the services. We've got a bundle, Elite, with the Omega bundle for 2000 plex. That's actually quite a lot what you get for that. 30-day Omega time times 3. Capsuleers, Elite Hoodie, Naga, Oracle, Talos, Tornado, and alright. Okay. Pretty cool. So there is a special bundle happening as well, a bundle, but nothing here for sales on Plex and things like that, which probably explains why you may have already seen it on the ticker. Plex has gone up substantially already. So let's move into the market. Let's get into those pilot services that's coming in at 550. There we go. As always, here is the Plex chart to begin with, and you can see after the pullback, I mean, first the moonshot practically to above 3.5 million for the average price. This was of course on the announcement from CCP that the sub prices would be increasing, prices for Plex as well, for real life money. Then we got a sale a little bit before FanFest, a couple of sales actually, that drove the price back down. We never went back below 3 million though, so the market knew what was up. This is only temporary, and now that FanFest is actually starting and those Plex sales are ending, we do have the increase that is basically continuing, 20-day moving average going straight up since the announcement from the increased prices. We're at a little bit above 3.4 million for the sellers, 3.2 million for the buyers. You can take a look at the player owned trade hubs, but that's just 3.4 as well, and going up to 3.2 million, a little bit above that in fact, for the first buyer in the Tranquility Trading Tower. So this is going to be something that I think this almost this entire segment is going to have to go through. There is going to be this increased price of a lot of these goods because of the increased real life price in order to get these pilot services. So skill extractors, no, first we'll do the multiple pilot training certificate. That one is going still slightly up. You can see that 20-day moving average still slightly going up, not really reaching highs just yet. We're not heading for 1.5 billion, but we are heading for 1.4 billion almost for the sellers, and the buyers are up above 1.3 billion as well. So that upwards pressure is basically here. Much smaller, slower market. One big sale can really keep this market subdued for quite a long time, but the general trend is going to be up here. Quick look at the body resculpt. That's actually in line with what we can expect considering the FanFest keynote. Right? All we really got on the FPS is that it's in development, it's still not announced. So honestly, to me that feels like they're not even ready to show anything. So they're still basically in the conceptual phase in all likeliness. They're trying out ideas, but there is no concrete plan to even begin serious development, let alone a roadmap towards getting the new game out there or anything like that. Nothing new when it comes to our characters. So yeah, the pilot's body resculpt might have been a little bit of hype up here, expecting that if something comes into FanFest, all of a sudden people will want to, change their characters. But instead, they're moving customization to the ships now with heraldry, and so this pullback here is actually pretty expected. Nobody is going to be that interested in these body resculpt certificates at the moment. Then we have the skill extractors. Quick look at the chart. As expected, we got the same little bump down on the Plex sale that basically ripples through to this market as well. But the move back up has started here as well. Well above 380 million on the chart, 385 million for the sellers, 368 million for the buyers. So still pretty narrow margin. The upswing has started. Impact on the skill injectors. Let's take a look at that. If there's like another take that this got from the keynote or anything like that. Nothing too major, but large skill injectors. And I am hearing noise in the background. I hope it doesn't come through too much. Basically, spring is in full swing here and people are starting to trim their hedges, which means quite a bit of extra noise. But let's keep going. 734 million for the large skill injections for the sellers, 688 for the buyers. So that is a little bit of margin that's coming up here, and we do have a bit of pressure on that 5-day moving average and a little bit of a daily average that might just be turning the corner here. Yeah, I'll be honest here again as well. No new ships, no new skills, no changes to gameplay that might require reskilling of toons or anything like that. And thus, any potential hype that this last month here, this upswing in large skill injectors might have had, is probably going to fizzle out now. I don't expect players to like need or want immediate skill injectors to change their veteran toons in any real way. Small skill injectors, a little bit more of a hacky stepwise chart here, but clearly you can see here that daily moving average went up to 170 million and is now starting to come back down as well. So that hype is over. 146 million for the sellers, 134 million for the buyers. Then we get the daily alpha injectors. I think this one could become our exception. It's actually already coming back down. This could be interesting. I mean, it's pure speculation on my part, but I am tying daily alpha injectors quite heavily to actual alpha players. Some of you guys actually say, no, there's quite a few alpha alts out there that use this mechanic as well. And so we could, from both perspectives, I think after the keynote, expect like a little bit of downward pressure on this. Why? I think the keynote did very clearly say that the heraldry system would be something that the Omega players would have the easier time in. So that does feel like it's going to be something that's quite severely gated behind having a subscription, so that could be you know, a little bit less of a motivator for alpha players to keep playing as alpha players. And at the same time, I think it was a hint that was dropped that some players that would have multiple accounts sub to the game would also get certain types of benefits, and that means that maybe the alpha player alts could become something that is less needed here. But we are seeing a pretty serious pullback in the price of the daily alpha injectors that went above 50 million and are back down to less than 49 million for the sellers, 44 million for the buyers. And then finally, we've got the hypercores that are still above 350,000, basically going to go in line with most pilot services, and thus the increased price from the real life perspective, 345,000 for the sellers, 327,000 for the buyers. Pretty narrow margin here again on some upwards pressure. Next up, we've got the minerals coming in at 1235. There we go. We can start with titanium that, well, is maybe trying to form a bottom. You can see 20-day moving average, 5-day moving average and the daily average coming together at the current price point. Volumes are going down a little bit, so there is not that much trading happening at these lower prices. And if we go for JITA prices, 382 now for the first seller, 372 for the buyers, so pretty narrow margin. We still have like 1 billion units here in the weight at the 386, 385 mark, so volumes are still quite plentiful, but the competing orders are definitely going down in volumes. Players are not just dumping their titanium and are probably looking elsewhere. For me, honestly, I'm pretty we shouldn't be too surprised, right? Availability has gone up quite substantially, but the value of mining in HiSec, the value of mining in general, I think is going down quite substantially. Maybe not in the place where CSP actually wants it. I think they do want some value for mining as well. And this is where that allegiance system, in my opinion, could be pretty interesting, because if you could also donate resources to, for instance, the Galente war effort, if that's who you're pledging allegiance to, CSP has, I think, a massive potential of creating a sink for resources that could then, through that system, perhaps provide benefits on the battlefield as well in faction warfare. I do hope that they can go pretty well with the faction warfare updates that they're planning to do, and that yeah, stuff like that could be part of the equation. Of course, might be wishful thinking on my part yet again, but if that were to happen, and if I don't get punished in a way that I wouldn't be able to fly into JITA anymore because I'm just providing minerals to Galente, you know, don't make it punishing from that perspective, then yeah, I can see myself, you know, receive orders, maybe even secret orders from the Galente Federation, try to complete those, and have fun playing the game that way. Next up, we've got the pyrite market that also is probably trying to at least form a bottom, if not turn the corner. I see the 5-day moving average and daily average is actually slightly above the 20-day moving average in the last couple of days. It is a pretty depressed price though, 780 for the sellers, 730 for the buyers, so pyrite is super cheap at the moment. Let's see if Mexilon is holding on. No, it is not. So a little bit of a lag between the pullback in pyrite and titanium compared to Mexilon, but the movement is just unstoppable. 1-year low point at this point. Still have quite a ways before 20-day moving average catches up here, so we're still on the downwards momentum. 51 for the sellers, 50 is for the buyers. There is always this pretty narrow margin. Let's see if the volumes are starting to drop as well. So, you know, getting too much below 50 is probably not in the books, but I don't think we're at the bottom just yet either, which is a significant pullback from 100 disk a year ago. And then if you look at the last year, we haven't been below 50, but we are definitely getting pretty close to that. The reverse picture, so if you want to take a little bit of risk and make more ISK, is of course the Isogen chart that is staying well above 300 ISK. We're talking 336 for the sellers, 320 for the buyers. We still have a 50 million unit order that managed to make its way into the 336 price range. Everything else here is basically 10 million and below. I think that's quite reasonable. So we need to chew through that 50 million order and then we could be set for another leg up. But for now, I would say this is a pretty impressive chart and a pretty good price already for Isogen. That you know, if we look, we have to browse. Look at that. This is, you know, less than $1 million for like a full page, and you actually have to go down towards a 400 disk before you get some more structured, larger sell orders, and even 600 again still for that large one. So I think the upwards potential is there, but I've said that a couple of weeks ago. The dynamics are going to start to change. Here we are going to start to get some downwards pressure as well from time to time, maybe from some bigger orders or even just in general competition for the Isogen market at the moment. But the long-term outlook for me personally is still that we are going to settle at a higher price than this. Then we've got the Noxium chart that did go below or towards 1100 ISK here and is starting to pull back from that. I think here we are in this supply demand dynamic. We're almost back at 1200 for the sellers, 1150 for those buyers. They have to follow the price very, very closely. And this is in line with what you would expect in a more risky environment where supply and demand do dictate the price. So we were probably oversupplied a little bit as we touched 1400 and stuff was being brought to the market to take advantage of that better and better price. Buyers saw an opportunity to bring the price back down to 1100 ISK, but here those that have to take the risk, that have to make the Noxium and then bring it to the market, are saying that's starting to be a little bit too low. Supplies are diminishing, and then the price has to go back up. Eventually, Isogen is going to come into that market mechanic as well, which I think is far healthier, of course, than just a constantly oversupplied market, like unfortunately what we have in the high-sec minerals at the moment. For nullsec, probably a little bit more of a stable situation. Let's see if I can get the chart going here. Zydrine went to 1000 disk and is immediately flattening. We're talking 1000 disk for the sellers, 940 ISK for the buyers. Very much in line with the much bigger control that those nullsec entities have over their mineral markets, right? Usually, like with the Noxium here, you can see a little bit like of an overshoot, and then you get a price response that goes back up. Here you probably have like a new price setting, 1000 disk. We're not going to go below that. That's what's happening, and then in a week here we start to really move sideways all of a sudden. Megasite, let's take a look at that, and if I can get the chart to show on this one, pretty much the same thing on the chart, right? Goes back down to a little bit above 1000 disk and starts to move sideways. It's 1000 for the sellers. You get a couple of exceptions that are trying to go below that, but those volumes will probably be absorbed decently easily. And 810 ISK for those buyers though. That's a pretty wider margin, which again, in my opinion, does show that there is a little bit of a difference between the Megasite market and the Zydrine market. There are other sources from Megasite that are being brought in here that are sometimes even willing to dump to at a much larger discount than what's happening with Zydrine. Then we also still have the Morphite market that is going back down. All right, interesting. A little bit more of a wavy pattern on this one as well. Not as much stability as, for instance, Sidrine. And we're heading back towards 40,000 ISK. 43,000 for the sellers, 41,000 for the buyers. Still pretty expensive in my book, but on this 1-year chart, definitely more availability and a slightly better price. Quick look at the chromodynamic tricarboxyls. Players mentioned, God, I already forgot where it came from, but that was like an event-driven thing. So price is down at 25k, but sellers at 61k, buyers at 28k. So this is really a weird one. Let me know in the comments. I'm actually starting to think that I should just get rid of this one from the from this segment. It is marked as a mineral, but it's really not very consequential. Let me know in the comments if you do want me to keep this one in and why. Then I'll be able to make a decision like next week or something like that. Let's move on to PI though. That is coming in at time frame 2050-ish. There we go, and as always we will start with the broadcast nodes that are plateauing at, I would say, a very nice price. 1.7 million for the sellers, 1.5 million for the buyers. So definitely one of the winners, I would say, for the announcement. It still has to hit, of course, the Siege Green update, where, for instance, dreadnoughts will become a lot cheaper. Players are clearly expecting increased demand or good demand for broadcast nodes from that one. Then we get the construction blocks back above 9,000 ISK. Not what I expected. I thought we would start to see that downwards pressure become a little bit more generalized, which we had started to see hints at in the last couple of weeks. But 9,200 for the sellers, 9,000 ISK for the first buyer. That is a pretty damn good price back at the 1-year high point level for construction blocks. So that's a nice comeback. Let's see if coolants can do something like that as well. Well, no, not yet, but the bottom is formed, and interestingly enough, again, 5-day moving average, 20-day moving average, and daily averages crossing each other. So we might really have turned the corner here as well after the punishing change to water consumption in general in the economy from CCP that was announced. 8,300 for the sellers, 8,200 for the buyers. So that's actually still a reasonable price, I would say as well. Not as good as what we've had in the last half year. 10k and up was very nice, especially in the entire PI market that was very depressed, but we're defending, I think, a reasonable price range. Enriched uranium is below 10k and not able to turn the corner just yet, but yeah, 10,000 almost, 9,800 for the sellers, 9,000 ISK for the buyers is still a pretty good price as well. And then we get our integrity response drones bouncing off of 1.5 million, so a bit more hesitation here, but look at that, sellers back at 1.7 already, buyers at 1.5 as well. So I think players are getting ready for Siege Green and are starting to hoard some of these advanced PI materials as well. Our mechanical parts trying to turn the corner as well. Still has a little bit of way to go before we can basically confirm a bottom, but it's at 8,900 ISK, 8,100 for the buyers, so that's also quite a reasonable price range. Miniature electronics are going for 10,000 ISK, 11 even, so a little bit of lack of supply here. I think it's a lot more difficult to produce this than, let's say, coolants, but that also gives you a bit of a premium. Basically a pretty nice price. The nano factory staying below 1 million. I would have hoped that that managed to make its way back up there, but decent supplies are still keeping the price in check. A bit below 1 million to 800,000 for most buyers. Organic mortar applicators also not doing that well, 630,000 to 580,000. The recursive computing module staying above 1 million, so that's a little bit more reasonable, 1.2 million in fact for the sellers, and buyers are climbing well above 1 million. Our robotics are flat below 70k, so the specialized ones still have not recovered in the same way that coolants had, for instance, 70,000 to 67,000. Rocket fuel for refined still 10k. 10k plus 9.5 for the. This is really, in my opinion, for refined PI materials, is actually a reasonable price. You're getting a reasonable return from your PI efforts. Self-harmonizing power core staying above 1.5, so you clearly have couple of differences in the advanced PI market as well, 1.5 to 1.5. So here the cap has been closed, and I think it's going to be up from here, if I'm not mistaken, with the Siege Green update. Smart fabs are specialized, a bit more volatility. That actually starts to be potentially interesting as well. But it's only 77,000 for the sellers, 56 for the buyers. So yeah, 90k, that's actually not that bad. But even historically speaking, specialized PI materials in my experience have been 100,000 discs. So it still feels like it's basically playing around in a low region from my perspective. Sterile conduits making their way back above 1 million, 1.2 again to 1 million, so a bit of a push pressure here. Supercomputers that are also specialized, it's 70k again, 72 to 64k, so I think we just have to accept that, while synthetic oil is making its way to a 1-year high point on a lack of availability. 11,000 for the sellers. Great price, above 10k, pretty happy to see that. And then 8,370 for the buyers. If you happen to have some, definitely a good time to sell. So kind of a reversal in my book. Specialized PI materials are still suffering. Here is even the synthetic synapses that did make their way above 100k on some implant movements, but it's back down 85,000 to 77,000. I think this trend will not be stopped. We'll be back at that 75k, maybe even 70k pretty quickly for synaptic synapses, unless something again happens implant related, which, well, I didn't mention that just yet, but there was definitely hints as well that they're planning to basically rip out attributes, which will have a very, very big impact on the implants market. We don't know their concrete plans there. Honestly, it does feel a little bit like a kick in the nuts for players that have gone through everything the hard way. But from my perspective, again, there is quite a lot of understanding that, yeah, at the moment the focus is still, let's get new players in, let's get new blood in, let's try to keep them in the game, which, well, with the skilling system, implant system, and the attributes, it's a barrier that might fall pretty soon as well. We'll see what CCP comes up with there. Then we get the transcranial microcontrollers. These are 74 to 70k, so that's again pretty much normal. And our water-cooled CPU are actually going up as well, well above the average for the year. It's only 6,000 to 5,700 disk, but it's the better price that you've had for one exception in the whole year, so that's not bad. And finally, wetware mainframes are back above 1.5 million as well, and buyers are close to 1.5 million. So general trend in PI, a little bit of surprise to me, because I was starting to see more and more signs of pressure here, but we are starting to see an upswing in quite a few of them. So I think that the Siege Green update might actually open up a lot more demand all of a sudden, and thus higher prices might be here to stay. Next up, advanced moon materials, coming in at 28 minutes. And they're still doing something there. I'm not sure, maybe they're cutting down a tree. It's very annoying for me, but I'm really hoping that it doesn't come through too much. But let's get started, as always, with the carbonites, or carbide-like materials. Here is crystalline carbonite for Galente, plateauing or landing, you could say, at 100 discs, so very, very depressed for the year. 103 to 98, we're even starting to come together on sellers and buyers. I think, yeah, 100 disc is going to try to be defended. If we break that, we could be in even more trouble for Tech 2 ships, or even cheaper Tech 2 ships, depends on your perspective, of course. Then we've got Caldari usually, so I'm looking for the C. Here is titanium carbide, landing a little bit higher, but definitely starting to settle down as well. 110 for the sellers, 106 for the buyers. For Minmatar, it's Fernite carbide that is below 100 disc, is trying to claw its way back, but can it succeed? Sellers still 97, 99 ISK here for a couple of sellers with millions of units, 90 ISK for the buyers. So this I think honestly the Galente bit is also in danger of having something like that happen to it. All of them might even go below under disk. So let's see what tungsten carbide for Amar is doing. Is just dropping straight through the 100 disk mark here as well. Sellers at 90, buyers at 80. Yeah, it's just oversupplied, massively oversupplied through the double availability on Moon Mining. Players have settled down. The factories, the production are turning, and this is really cratering these prices, putting a lot of pressure on these carbide materials. Let's see, this week it's basically everything is under pressure. 1 year low point for Amar, 1 year low point for Minmatar, Caldari at 110 and Galente at 100. Those are super low prices, 50% off from the start of the year easily. Are we seeing the pressure here as well in the metamaterials? Let's start with Galente, that is photonic metamaterials. Yep, another leg down as well, pretty much in the last 10 days or so, below 7.5. We're talking 7,000 now for the sellers, 6,750 for the buyers. So here we moved another step down. For Caldari, it's non-linear metamaterials. That last 10 days, another step down as well. 1 year low point at 10,700 to 10,700. A bit more competition for the Caldari stuff, but can it really maintain that premium for a long time? I'm not sure. Then we've got Minmatar now, and now the neighbors are starting to clean up here as well, vacuuming right next to the wall. Let's keep going though. Plasmonic metamaterials for Minmatar, bouncing off of 10,000 disk. We've seen that before. I think pressure is going to continue. 10,600 to 9,100 disk, so that definitely has room to go lower. And then for Amar, it's terahertz metamaterials that is just gone below 10,000 disk as well, so another 1 year low point, and it can go quickly here. Look at that, 10,000 here, 9,700 disk for the first seller coming in here again, 9.1 for the buyers. Big margins that are still opening up here. Yeah, the advanced moon materials tied to the production of especially ships, I would say here, are under massive amounts of pressures. 1 year low points again for a lot of them. So that's not going to be good news, I think, for the other ones. Here is fermionic condensates, landing on 40k, 1 year low point, 50% loss again from the start of the year. Ferrogel, another step down in the last 10 days, currently selling for 18,300, buyers at 17.5. So even at these 1 year low prices, buyers are still making huge margins and pulling away from those sellers. Fullerides, 400 disk, not willing to go below that just yet. Kind of worried that that won't hold. Hypersynaptic fibers just broke through the 5,000 disk barrier like it's nothing. 4.2 now for the sellers, 4,000 for the buyers. You can see the oversupply, and the first buyer still coming in with 1.3 million units. That's just going to continue to become more and more available. We do have to be honest on that. Here is nanotransistors, 1 year low point as well. Breaking through 2.5. Let's see if sellers are below that point. Yep, 2,400 for the sellers, 2.3 for the buyers. Started at 5,000 disk, lost more than 50% as well. Phenolic composites landing on 1,000 disk, another 50% down. Pressurized oxidizers now well below 10,000 disk, so that has been broken as well. 9.3 to 9.1. Reinforced carbon fibers were already below 10,000, but the downside or the downward pressure is still here, 6.3 to 6.1. That's 40% from just a couple months ago. And then we get ceramic fibers, or one exception, but yeah, there we go. Right at the end, 5-day moving average, daily averages back down yet again. Didn't make its way back above 300, back at 250 for the first seller. So yeah, advanced moon materials. If we're looking at a depressing market from the price perspective, it's here. If you're looking at crazy availability, oversupply, and super cheap prices, this is your segment, which will of course flow through the Tech 2 ships that are next at 33.45. There we go, and I'm honestly not expecting too much, so unless we see like something that's like super pronounced, very interesting, we'll take a look at the details. But honestly, here we get the Basilisk that went to 1 year low point of 110 million on the chart. A little bit of a bounce on this one. We're at 136 for the sellers, 120 for the buyers. But is this a bounce that you can make a trade on? Honestly, I don't think so. And where will we go next? I think you guys know my answer. I think we'll go back below very, very quickly. Then we get the Cerberus that had to bounce like maybe 2-3 weeks ago, but this is basically already coming back down below 150, 148 for the sellers, 142 for the buyers. So we're clearly, in my opinion, if you look at these two charts already, looking at a new trade range that is trying to be found in the Tech 2 ship market. The curse right now racing down to that new potential trade range. 130 million, started the year at 230. We're talking 127 to 120. So can you try to buy the bottom? Yes, but I would always do so in like just a one ship purchase or something like that, because if we look at advanced movements, I would not be surprised that the market is wrong still on the new trade range and that we could go even lower. Damnation, straight up 1 year low point, started the year well above 500 million, is now selling for 247, buyers at 237. Deacon, not yet super pronounced, but you can see we broke through the 20 million mark, which for the averages has been a place that's been defended on several occasions over the last year. So this is clearly a break as well, down to 19 and 14 million for the buyers. Yeah, they're expecting the continued crash. Eagle already at that new range, bit of a bounce, but that's not tradable. EOS, same story, 1 year low point, tries to get back to 300, is probably not gonna make it. Then we get the Aries. That one's a bit more significant. Let's see what the bottom average price is. 36 million, went below 30 million a little bit below a month ago and is now selling for 48 million. This is something that we did notice last week. That's actually tradable right here, right? This bounce here is tradable. I would say smaller ships have that potential for more volatility because they become really affordable all of a sudden, where a large group might say, all right, let's just buy up a whole fleet of them, and that could bring in those large enough percentages to actually trade in. I think ships like the Damnation, it's gonna be a lot harder. Smaller ships, I do think, have that potential, and we were at the Aries right here. That one had a bounce. That's actually tradable. So if you did keep an eye on this and you bought the bottom, selling now will make you a nice profit. Then we get the Flycatcher, you know, right here in April. Very unusual to see a bounce back from below 50 to 70 million. That's actually tradable. We're back on the downside at the moment, so be careful. But if you have buy orders that are starting to get close to 40 million, at 43 maybe still a little bit too high, but you can consider this, in my opinion, destroyers, frigates. That's where I would try if I really felt like trying something. Here is the Guardian. So went below 130, jumps up to 150, but is already back down. Sellers are already down to 147, 136. Gonna be very hard, I think, to materialize a lot here. You can also see the low prices for the ranges are already going back down substantially. So selling now, you're probably already too late for the Guardian. The Heretic, a little bit too stable in my book, so I think pressure will be back to go back below 40 pretty quickly. Then we've got the Hounds, and yep, this is you know, the one thing that potentially again can give us hope. In 2 days, 500 Hounds have changed hands, which is like way more than the regular average, and that has a big impact as we touch 15 million on the daily average, right? That was the days before this, buy for close to 15 million. You're selling at 21 all of a sudden. 17 for the buyers, they're still being very careful, so it's pretty difficult. But right now in the Hound you get another sell opportunity if you manage to spot those bottom ranges, which was definitely possible in my opinion over the last 3 weeks or so. Ikitursa actually trending back up here, selling for 658. That's clearly an availability issue here on the upswing. 587. So do you want to trade in here? Again, volumes are a bit too low for my book, but the margins can potentially be quite nice. Ishtar I don't think is going to be good news. No, that one is continuing the downslide, so another 1 year low point, 132 to 121. When to buy? yeah, difficult to say here. Now we're touching 130, so maybe this is the right time to buy as close as possible to 120. Maybe we can see something happening. Honestly, if there's one ship that I want some heraldry for, it would be the Ishtar. Have some nice pimped out Ishtar to fly around with, so that people can recognize me at the gate, and maybe even my Alliance logo would be very cool. But at the moment, super cheap. And it's an awesome all-in-one explorer. Not that I'm buying lots of Ishtars at the moment, and I'm trying to talk up the price. But yeah, let's keep going. Here's the Kirin, little logistics frigate, 1 year low point as well. Below 15 million for the buyers. Manticore settling straight. This is really unusual, right? The Manticore has always been like a little bit of a different stealth bomber in my experience, a little bit harder to trade, but it is pretty interesting. We just went down towards 15 million and now we are settling here, 16.4 to 15.4 million. That's the sellers, that's the buyers, they're at this position. Where are we going next? Who knows? But it does have this strange stability that some of the other smaller ships have more volatility. So this might be the time to buy. It might also still be too early. The monitor is back up a little bit, but the pressure already on the daily averages, and the volumes here are just too terrible. I'm actually going to get rid of this one. Thought it could be interesting to get a flag cruiser Concorde, but it just, you know, sometimes there's days without monitor trading, so I don't think that's worth it. Then we get the Nemesis, another one that has settled down as it touches 12 million, probably 14 to 12.5 million, so very, very low, right, considering where we were a year ago. These are super cheap stealth bombers. Honestly, Manticore, Nemesis, if you want to take that Tech 2 gamble, and if you look at what happened with the Hound and with, what was it, the Ares, I think, it could be okay. You could try to really, I would definitely have the patience and don't go in with 29 like this guy here, but if you try to buy, let's say, up to 4 of them and go close to 13 million, I think you've got a chance for picking it up. And honestly, considering the Hound is back up to above 20 million, there's potentially a trade to be had here, so something to think about. Then we've got the Nighthawk that's also making its way back up from a bottom at 300 million, which it touched twice, 380. That's practically tradable as well, on increased volumes, so that's going to be interesting. Knowing the meta will probably help you a lot in trying to trade in Tech 2 as well. Oneros, 1 year low point, 100 million. Are sellers below? Yeah, 97 million for the sellers of the Oneros. I don't think players would have expected that a couple of years ago. Purifier also landing on that lower range, 17 million to below 15 million. 15 million for a Purifier, not bad. Could potentially be something to look into as well. The Rook is at a 1 year low point, less than 10 a day. It's going to be harder. Saber, not really, you know, not enough volatility just in general, I would say, on this chart. Scalpel, a little bit better in volatility. Let's see where those buyers are at. Below 15 million as well. Scimitar, 1 year low point, heading 400 million. Sleipnir, bit of a volume increase and a bit of a bounce, but I think it's going to be easily absorbed by the market. Again, 20 of them and you're completely crashing the price again. Thalia is going back down. Volumes are also a little bit bad. Logistics frigate, I'm actually going to get rid of this one as well, just to try and clean it up and maybe make room for other stuff. Vagabond, 1 year low points. It's a cruiser, but it's a heavy assault cruiser, a little bit like the Ishtar, going for 135 to, you're buying it for 130 million, and at the start of the year was above 250 million. Yeah, maybe. Don't expect huge volatility. I think the small ships are still a better gamble, but looks interesting for sure. And then we get the Zarmast going down a little bit, 490, 430 for the buyers. Potentially trading above 500. Yeah, maybe again. I like the Triglavian Tech 2s because they potentially have very big margins. You buy at the buy order, you wait for the right timing, like right now, probably for the, where is it for the Ikitursa. And we're actually talking a very big difference between these lows and these highs here. So, but that's definitely like a one ship trade. don't spook the markets, and you need a little bit of timing there, but that's actually more interesting than most of the other large Tech 2 ships. So it's either I would go all in, go massive, go a billion-isk basically for a single trade, or go for the smallest ships that in my opinion do have that volume potential and thus that volatility potential. Tech 2 ship market, it's not easy. I would definitely also recommend that you buy slowly and that you buy what you can actually use yourself. Next up, the Tech 3 ship market coming in at 44.30. There we go. As always, here's the destroyers. So the Confessor basically flat for the week below 50 million, 49 to 45 million. 94 of them here are keeping things in check. New supply last 48 hours, 0. So that's definitely unusual. Let's see what the Hecate's been doing. That one has been pushing down. You can see buyers starting to go below 50 million as well on those minimum prices. So it's 54 to 49 million. New supply, yeah, almost a full page here in the last 24 hours, including 65 of them in the last 24 hours. That should put more pressure on this one to go back down towards 50 million. All right, that to me is still logical. Let's see what the Jackdaw is doing. Also pressure, look at that. Again, minimum prices starting to drop off, so that should mean more supply. 54 million to 51 million. And yeah, again, another full page, and that's a lot of them that have found their way into the market. So my personal hope is that we do find some logical things, and for now, why would you bring in Confessors that are selling below 50 when you can still bring in Hecates and Jackdaws that are going for over 50? I don't think you would. So I'm hoping that they can all normalize and come together at 50 million. But we'll have to wait and see if that happens. It's definitely a lot of Hecates and a lot of Jackdaws. Has this given the Zweppel any breathing room? It's slightly edging up, so are these minimum prices, but the actual high sell prices are just not moving at all. 48 million though to 44 million, and new supply, that's, well, it's like less than 10 ships, but it's still here. So this to me still feels like, yeah, the Zweppel is still just doing its own thing and is still remaining decoupled for the others. But I do have a little bit of hope that Confessor, Hecate and Jackdaw can come together at 50 million on this one, and then it could be interesting to see if one of them becomes oversupplied to get a buy opportunity or anything like that. Hasn't been the case in the last couple of months, but maybe it will happen. Let's look at the cruisers next. Here is the Legion going back up. I'm not sure if I called this buy opportunity down here, but now we're selling at almost 200 million. And still 181 for the buy. I think I called it well below 180 for the buy opportunity. So here's definitely a trade that was possible in the Legion. I think volumes are more respectable, and I'm seeing less potential for pure manipulation in this market. So Legion, you want to sell a hull, I think this is the time to do so. Loki is pretty flat. You can see the spread is actually trending down a little bit in the last couple of days. 197 to 183. Not exactly the place where you want to buy or sell. Then we get the Proteus, also pretty stable, but you can see those minimum prices are starting to come down towards 180 as well. That's interesting. 189 to 178 now for the buyers. I would say it's still a little bit too early. Wait for those averages, full averages, to drop off as well. Then you get a much better chance of picking up a Proteus below 180 million. But it's interesting. That's another trend that we're maybe starting to see through these minimum prices that are starting to pull out or pull down. And then we get the Tengu. Actually, spread is increasing here on a slightly upwards price, so that's much harder to call. 195 to 176. You're buying well below 180, but availability probably isn't enough on this upwards pressure. So too early to sell, and definitely gonna be very difficult to buy a cheap Tengu at the moment. But I kind of like this, kind of an on the spur discovery here, and that you do have basically a bit of momentum that you can see here. Where we had these maxima that were going up, minimum starting to trend up as well, and then all of a sudden we got a breakout, which is of course being absorbed by the markets. But then if you look at the Loki, you're starting to get some telltale signs that there's actually downward pressure on the price here, and it's a little bit more noticeable in the Proteus. That's actually interesting. So that could be interesting from a trading perspective. I'll try to keep an eye on it. Maybe we can find some potential cool stuff there. And then finally, we got the extra product for the week. I am choosing the faction battleships. It's actually been a while, and those might become cheaper on the announcement with Siege Green. So let's take a look at those at 49.10. And so we need battleships, we need faction battleships. We start with pirate factions usually. So here is the Barghest. Has already that. I find this again to be pretty interesting. People were pretty angry over here when, the end of scarcity was announced. Like, where the hell is the prosperity? But look at Tech 2 ships, look at advanced moon mining. Now look at the slow downtrend for the Barghest. It's trading at a 1-year low range, just above $1 billion. It's still very expensive, of course, but it's $1 billion and not $2 billion, which we had in September, for instance. So this trend is interesting from my perspective. Then we get the Macarial back at the lower end of the 1-year range here as well. Below 700 million for the sellers, 630 for the buyers. The Nestor, all right, a little bit of a volatile down as well. I think this could be Siege Green related. Still $1 billion. It's still expensive, of course, but it's also a pirate faction battleship that's like super popular. Same thing with the Nightmare. Actually, is going back up a little bit on the lower prices, back above $1 billion, basically. Yeah, 1.1 billion to 900 million. Pretty decent spread there. Balgorn, bit more volatility and a little bit cheaper, 600 million to 500 million. Then we get the Rattlesnake, very popular PvE platform, of course. Look at that, back at where we were a year at. So here people were very angry. Where the hell is the end of scarcity? But it's, I think, starting to ripple through the economy. Below 900 million for the sellers, 830 for the buyers, and finally the Vindicator. That's also heading for $1 billion average price right here. So pirate faction battleships already seeing some pressure, and maybe the Siege Green update is going to add to that a little bit. We'll keep an eye on it slowly. Then the Navy faction battleships, the Thunderchild, all of a sudden shooting up in popularity for some reason. Complete lack of availability, 1.4 billion. It is very unique, of course. Edencom, Triglavian stuff is definitely something that's not in line with the general economy. So let's take a look at the Apocalypse Navy issue. 500 plus million, 600 to 520, pretty average actually. So let's see what the Armageddon is doing. 500 million as well, pretty average on the 1-year chart. What's with Galente, Dominic's 600 million, maybe the lower range, but also feels decently average. Megatron Navy issue is probably a little bit cheaper at the moment, going for less than 600 million, 530 for the buyers. Raven Navy issue, let's see if we can get something to show on this chart. Actually became expensive, very high volumes all of a sudden, so might be faction warfare related here. Is starting to pull back from that though. Scorpion Navy issue, I'd call that decently average, just above 500 million. Tempest Fleet issue is very cheap at the moment. Buyers are at 350 million, so availability should be pretty high. Typhoon Fleet issue also feels pretty low, below 500 million for the buyers. So kind of interesting. I am seeing a pullback in prices and thus in budget needed for some of these pirate faction ships. Navy factions, well, kind of interesting. It's Caldari that's expensive, and it's not Galente that's inexpensive, but Minmatar. So not really sure how that works out, but yeah, they're also, in my opinion, trading at kind of doable ranges for faction battleships here. So I find this bit basically pretty interesting, that we do have especially on, for instance, the Barghest, some of that pressure that has started to mount. So players have found a way to produce them, to bring them to the market, and to actually bring the price down for some of these pirate faction battleships on this. And in general, I think that trend could continue, considering the Siege Green update that CCP has announced, and potential changes to the blueprints and the industry for larger ships. So yeah, there you go, guys. That is it for this EVE Talk. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.